Welcome to the HR Uprising podcast. This podcast series explores HR hot topics and challenges through conversations with relevant experts and real-life HR, learning, and OD professionals. The HR Uprising is about learning through collaboration and evidence-based action. We want colleagues to have the confidence and skills to rise up through their organizations by delivering real, lasting business value. Now, introducing your host, chartered psychologist, experienced change agent, entrepreneur, speaker, and coach, Lucinda.
Hi there, it's Lucinda, and I wanted to introduce this special episode because it's the first one in our real life HR professionals episodes. As you know, the HR Uprising is about building each other up. It's about supporting other like-minded HR professionals to get the best out of themselves and their careers. And it's about supporting others and collaborating. Within our HR Uprising LinkedIn group, which do feel free to join us if you haven't yet, we quite often, we looked for people who had got interesting careers and were interested and prepared to come on the podcast. But we wanted to do this because we'd found a number of people were asking for help in their career and working out how to make the next step. So the idea of this real HR series, which we're going to run on and off, every other week or every few weeks, we'll feature a real life HR professional, is to do exactly that, to showcase real people and their journeys so that hopefully it can inspire others. It's not about something that's out of the reach, it's about how normal people can build a great HR career. So I really hope you enjoy this. I very much enjoyed talking to Paula and I'll switch on to that shortly. Before I go further though, I also wanted to introduce a couple of other things that you may or may not be aware of. Since lockdown, we've been running lots of webinars basically because we found that that's where people were learning online. So if you're not already aware of them, I had one last week I had 200 people on, which was amazing. I'm running two every month. And so I run one which is aimed at people professionals, and I also run one which is aimed at line managers. So whether you want something to develop yourself, and this month's topic is about virtual performance management and performance management, or whether you want something to develop people who work with you in terms of your line managers, you might find that the webinars that we're running, and I'll put the link there on our Actus page, Actus/webinars, you might find that they're worth checking out. So please feel free to do that. And finally, I also wanted to announce that I will be kicking off our newly redeveloped Change Superhero training course. It was a one-day face-to-face. It's now 3 modules, but also with a kick-off and an end call and a final call. It's highly interactive. We've had great fun developing it. And anyone who wants to be more confident managing change themselves, supporting others through change, that will be kicking off in September, and we are taking early bird bookings during August at half price. So again, I'll put the link in the show notes, or just go to hruprising.com or to actus.co.uk and you can access or check out more detail about what's involved in that virtual training program, which should be really good fun. So enough of the update. Over now to Paula Jones in our first real HR episode. Hello and welcome to the HR Uprising podcast. My name's Lucinda Carney, and this week I'm extremely excited because this is our first in a new series of episodes, and this series is all about real life HR professionals. We know from feedback from our audience that many of you are at different stages in your career, and it's really helpful to understand from other professionals the things that they've learned, the journeys that they've been on, and I think just this opportunity to collaborate with regard to building our network. So I'm very grateful to Paula Jones from Leighton to be our first willing candidate. We've just been chatting away, and we'll try not to go too fast because we think we might end up bouncing around too much, Paula, I think, from our natural pace of conversation. So Paula, do you want to just give me a little bit of an introduction to yourself, your current role maybe, and then we'll go into your background and how you got to be here?
Yeah, thank you so much, Lucinda. This is so exciting. It's great. Thank you. So I currently work for a company called Leighton. It's based in Sunderland. It's a tech organisation. And I've been with Leighton now since about 2017, so nearly 3 years. I am the only HR person in a standalone role as head of people. That's what we call ourselves. And I pretty much do everything. I am the strategic HR influence, setting anything from performance related plans down to culture, engagement, through to doing stuff, as I like to call it. We've got a headcount of just under 40 employees, and it's an amazing, incredibly amazing organisation to work for, with incredible talent, amazing talent. I'm always in awe of tech people. It's incredible. Mm-hmm.
You sound pretty passionate about it.
Love it.
In terms of your role, obviously we'll go back into your previous ones, but I'm interested because as we were just chatting, it's been a challenging time for HR professionals recently, and there's been a lot of, let's say, transactional activity that people have had to jump into with changes in laws and all the various working pattern changes. So it's interesting to hear the fact that you see a key part of your role as being strategic. And how do you manage to get that balance, if it's mainly you, between being strategic and tactical?
That's a really good question, because at the moment, I tend to I've got an administrator who helps me occasionally, who will do a lot of my letters and things. However, when I first started at Leighton, I also upskilled all of the line managers, so I don't get involved in any of the real tough conversations and the conflict conversations that maybe some of the managers will do around performance or sickness absence or whatever. So they tend to do all of that side of the work themselves. Even some of the administration with I don't know, with contracts of employment, etc., they will tend to do all of them themselves. But we've also got a recruiter that works for another part of our business that will do that side of the work and the administration. For the strategic side of things, that's my passion. That's what I really love to get involved with. I like to see the things that we can put in place that are aligned to the business strategy and that will make a real difference to our people, to keep them engaged, to keep them motivated, and to keep them retained in their roles, and to watch them grow and to flourish. So it can be a bit of a juggling act, and in particular, whilst we've been going through COVID-19, a lot of it has been extremely transactional. We've just gone through a period of time which has been unheard of, especially for me in my 25 years of HR. But it's the case of having to just juggle and deal with things. You've got to be very resilient, very well organised. And it's just trying to juggle things as and when, and surrounding yourself with great peers.
So it's great to hear. Obviously, I suppose you're a talent organisation in terms of what you do. You've always been good at bringing in talent, and that's so. And I get the fact that you would have had to be tried transactional recently with various restructures and things. Going back though, I'm just intrigued as to when you came in. So when you say you upskilled the managers, did you personally train them? Was there any resistance to them doing that? How did you get them on board to take on? Take on something that traditionally quite a lot of line managers might see as being an HR role. So a lot of those admin tasks that end up with HR. How did you persuade them to take them on, and how did you upskill them?
That's well, if people know my personality, I can be quite direct, but in a very nice way. Joking apart, what I tend to do is I build great relationships. I get to understand what makes a manager tick, what's important to them and what's important to their people, and how can we get the best out of their people and out of the line managers as well. You will be amazed that when I started at Leighton, a lot of the managers were wanting to do the management side of their roles, but they were just never allowed to, because of the amount of, because as well as being managers, they were also being project managers, or they were being developers. And so what we did was we split the role so that they would do maybe 20% of project management or 20% of development, and then it would be 80% of the other side of line management. And literally I set up a number of different workshops for people, and it was pretty much just around how do they have conflict conversations, how do they manage somebody who potentially has a disability, how do they manage those performance conversations and setting the right goals, having check-ins and regular one-to-ones with them, how do you recruit great talent, etc. So we had a suite of workshops which I developed, which I took from other companies I'd worked in. So, it's just about, just put them through a training program. And,
Brilliant.
It doesn't just stop in the classroom. There's quite a lot of hand holding and a bit of coaching and things with them. But a lot of the managers are doing so well, really, really well, and getting as much as what they can out of their team and themselves.
So they were up for it, and you kind of helped them clarify their responsibilities so that they weren't being pulled onto other priorities, just they weren't being pushed into the day job only, so they were able to do it. And then you gave them the skills and then continue to develop them. And now 3 years on, you're reaping the benefits, because it's allowing you to be strategic whenever possible. That's great. Well done. I was going to say, that sounds like a model answer. Congratulations. And I guess you must have the support of your CEO, or you sit on the executive board, don't you? You sit on the senior board. So that, I guess they were supportive of that.
I have to say that my CEO, James, he'll kill me for saying this, but he's probably one of the best managers I've ever worked with. Sees real value in HR. I've never, ever really had to push and influence him on many things, because he just sees the value in it, and he's very people orientated. And the rest of my peers that I work with on the exec team as well are in exactly the same boat as my CEO. People are what drive our business, and if we don't treat people in the right way, people will just leave.
Yeah, so that sets the culture, doesn't it? So that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Okay, so that sounds like a really nice place to be, and it's a culmination of your journey so far. You said you've been 25 years in HR. So do you want to go right back to the start of your HR journey and how you got into it? Yeah,
it's I fell into HR. I didn't go to university. I went to college. I studied a secretarial course, an administration course. I worked as a typist in a typing pool for nearly 10 years for the civil service, and took voluntary redundancy, and I started doing a bit of temp work in a variety of different administration roles, one of which was for the health authorities, as they were at that time, and as a HR administrator. It was on a temporary basis, and my very, very first HR job, I was put into a room with about 6 filing cabinets, and when I opened the drawers, there was papers everywhere. They were people's personal files, and I had to go through every file and make sure every relevant piece of paper was in the relevant file. And that was my very first HR role. It took me about a week to do it. It was the most horrendous, but the most interesting, because you get to read about people. And that was my very first job, and it came with its ups and downs. I wasn't very academic, but I'm very good at retaining information and learning stuff on the job. And I ended up getting my permanent role, started my e-PDR as the administrator there, and was there for about 3 years. And then took my very first standalone role for a business that did credit management. I was the HR manager there. My manager was based in an office about 2 hours drive away, and it was like call centre. So it was my first experience of working in a call centre, and having to deal with a lot of different opportunities there, because people are calling, collecting debt. And so it's extremely difficult for the employees because they'll have extremes of conversations of those people extremely upset on the phone, and then at the other end of the scale they could be getting threatened,
angry,
leaving work. And that job was great. It was a great foundation for me, really, to start using my own development for employee relations, because it was quite employee relations orientated, disciplinaries, sickness absence, etc. And I worked there for a good couple of years to get some great skills under my belt. And then from there on, really, my roles have just, been so varied in outsourcing organisations, working with warehousing and direct mail, sales and service. I've worked in the telecommunications as senior HR manager for Cordwell Group for about 12 months, which was a experience because it's quite a direct and very hard culture to work in. But for some reason, they really liked me, and I had great relationships with the CEOs and with the managing directors there. And then I suppose where my real HR background started was at Sage. I worked for Sage over 2 periods for about 9 years. I worked in a team of about 50 people, HR professionals,
50 HR people. That's a bit of a
roles.
That's a bit of a switch from one to the other, isn't it? That's so from being standalone to be part of 50.
Yeah, it is, and it's. On the one hand, it's amazing because you've got these fabulous professionals that are sitting around you. You're not on your own. So if you want to sit and discuss something that's quite complex, because I did deal with quite a lot of high-level complex ER issues there, from fraud to pornography to people having fights and things. Just being able to bat around ideas and share some ideas was fantastic. But then on the other side of it, you didn't get involved in the recruitment side of things or the reward side of things or the L&D side of things. You were quite niche, that it was, you went to the business areas, you helped them with strategy.
Quite specialist.
It is. So it was a fantastic time at Sage. I supported 4 or 5 different business areas with all very different ideas of how they wanted to support people, very different strategies, very different transactional things that we had to do on a day-to-day basis. But the main thing I would say about working with Sage that I learned was building those good, strong, credible relationships, not just working within your HR team, but getting out and talking to people and talking to your stakeholders as well. And I found that really, really important. But it was... I took voluntary redundancy the first time, went back 6 months later. I stayed there for 4 years. I left as their senior business partner, and then took a couple of roles in utilities, which just wasn't right for me. I've worked in the care industry, which is an incredible industry to work in. Very, very underrated. But what I would say probably the hardest industry I've ever worked in. The hardest industry.
So care homes, you mean, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I looked after 14 care homes across the Northeast and Yorkshire, and obviously very underpaid, people working extremely long hours, dealing with very complex needs from people with dementia care, and my main role there for the 12 months I was there was dealing with employee relations. That's pretty much all I did every single day. And then obviously from Wellburn Care, I went straight to Leighton. Mm-hmm.
So that's a really diverse career, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I've got a couple of questions about that. One is about what would make you decide to move from one role to the next? Did you feel you'd outgrown them, or you didn't like the culture, or were you kind of spotted a new job that you liked more? What drove your changes?
There's been a variety of reasons why. But with Sage, I think the main one was with Sage, because having spent so much time working for one organisation, I think I just got to a point in my career where I just felt that I couldn't really add any more value than what I'd added in the time I was there. There was a lot of change happening at Sage, and I embrace change. I love it. It's what makes the world go around. It's what makes businesses so unique. But I just found that the changes that they were going through, they just weren't right for me. And also as well, if I'm being really honest, working in a team of 50 people can be quite very time consuming, but also as well, you start to create your small little cliques in the office. And everybody's vying for that next promotion opportunity. And I just felt, being somebody who was a little bit more mature than a lot of the people in the office, I just thought, I think the time's right for me to move on. And then a couple of the others were, in terms of you start in roles, then something else comes up that you've been waiting for all of your career. And these things, like me leaving Wellbeing Care to go to Leighton, I've always wanted to work in a tech organisation as a standalone, as the head of HR, working with the CEO, working with the executive teams, working with the shareholders, creating great stuff. And if I turn that opportunity down, I may never have got that opportunity again. So that's the reason why. So.
And I guess because you're in the Northeast, it's a smaller pond, is it, to a certain extent? In terms of you see a role that's in a place that you want to work in, prior to the days where we were location independent. Is that part of the driver as well?
Yeah, it is. I mean, if you know Northeast, and especially the HR community, it's very incestuous. You see one person, one company, and then two years later. So you never, ever annoy anyone in the HR community. You'll always see them a couple of years later.
Yeah, you see that in industries as well, don't you?
Absolutely, you do. And I think the thing is with the Northeast, you don't always tend to find these big roles, that allow you the freedom to implement great things for people. You're always part of a smaller cog, I think, in bigger organisations. However, the Northeast now is coming up as being one of the biggest tech industries outside of London. And so they're growing, and these tech industries will always need HR. So we're going to see the tech industry grow and grow and grow over the coming years. So,
and also your point about talent and retaining talent, that actually means that it's not, you do need to treat your people well and to get the best out of them, because there are maybe opportunities around the corner which there might not have been if or you can also poach talent. I suppose it's an opportunity and a threat if you're in that sort of scenario.
Yeah, it is. And I think with the Northeast is because there are a lot of tech businesses coming up in the Northeast, you're tending to find that they can command it's an employee's opportunity to be able to go from different companies to different companies dependent on offerings. Because for them, it's not just about salary. It's finding an organisation that floats their boat, that gives them what they need, that provides a bit of excitement. So I'm now talking with my CEO about looking at growing our own talent, getting into the universities. We have some of the most fantastic universities in the UK that have the most, STEM students that are studying for computer studies and for development studies and things. So I think businesses need to tap into that a lot more.
Definitely. And then my second question on that, Paula, was about your CIPD. So two questions around it is, one is, you said you don't consider yourself to be particularly academic. So how easy or difficult did you find it to do? And secondly, how useful have you found it?
I have to say I found it incredibly difficult, and there was the reason for that was when I started on my CIPD back in 1996, I think it was 95. I was working full time, and I was a single parent with a young child, and not being very academic as well, and going to college and then on to university to do my CIPD. It took me 4 years to do it. I did fail exams a couple of times, but I didn't let it faze me. I just thought, you've got to do this, even if it's just to prove something to myself. But I managed it.
Good for you.
And I think I would say, and this, because I know people work incredibly hard to get their CIPD, I would say it's not really been a barrier for me on whether or not I would have had my CIPD qualification or not. You know, a lot of the companies that I have worked for never asked about CIPD. Leighton did. A lot of the other bits, in fact, Sage, I don't believe, asked me about my CIPD. But I do think CIPD allows for the credibility in the industry of HR with other HR professionals. It gives them that reputation and that credibility.
Yeah. So was it 5? Which level did you do?
So, well, when I did mine, it didn't have all of these levels. In fact, when
it was just a one qualification.
It was the e-PDR when I did mine. It wasn't the CI.
Oh yes, yes, I do remember that term. Yeah, I do. Yeah. Institute of Personnel Development, wasn't it? Okay, fair enough. So it was the qualification at the time. So it's been more of a credibility for you, would you say, and a confidence build?
Yes, definitely a confidence build. And you know, I have often thought to myself, should I, you know, get my chartered institute or something like that? But I've always found I've never really needed it. But it's something that's always been in the back of my mind.
Brilliant. Okay, so on that then, moving on, so that was some useful tips, almost like it is hard, but kind of carry on and do it and challenge yourself. What other tips have you got for aspiring HR professionals or people building their careers at the moment? What have you learned along the way that you think has been useful, or do you wish you'd done differently?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's not about what a HR person does. For me, it's all about how a HR person does things and how a HR person interacts and builds relationships. I think one of the biggest things that I found in HR is just having that real belief in yourself. You'll get knocks and scrapes along the way. I was told once I would never make it in HR, so I wanted to prove a point by doing it. And, you know, it's just never, ever allowing somebody to tell you that you are not good at what you do. And that's one of the biggest things that I've learned. I think with HR, you need very broad shoulders. You need a lot of resilience. HR gets blamed for everything. Yeah. I mean, actually, a light goes out, it's HR's fault. And I wouldn't take it personally. It's harder in your early career for HR not to take it personally because people want to be liked. But for me, it's not about being liked. And I've learned this over time. It's about being respected and people understanding the reasons why you do certain things. I think you need to have a passion for HR, and that's the one thing I've really learned. You have to have a passion for people and for organisations and for doing the right thing for people, as well as balancing the commercial side as well. So you may have to make some really tough decisions that you don't really want to do, but you know it's the right thing for the organisation. And in the long run, it will be the right thing for the person that you're working with as well. Some other things is, you know, over my career, I've sat at a lot of exec tables and I'm not the best with numbers. I learn how to do it. You know, I look after budgets and stuff like that. And sometimes I could be sitting around a table and I'm thinking, I've got no idea what they're talking about. Don't be afraid to ask. Can you just tell me what you're talking about here? Learn. Never be afraid to question and challenge. Even if the back of your mind you're thinking, this is a dumb question here, just ask it. It's a must. And then I think finally for me, the other thing for me is be open and honest and transparent with the people that you work with. Show humility, be yourself. Try not to be the HR with the big stick who goes around thinking that if somebody does something wrong, that it's all about disciplinaries and things. Be pragmatic and listen and be kind. with people. HR isn't black and white at all. There are a lot of shades of grey, but being pragmatic will allow you to find the right solutions, and most of all, have fun. A lot of HR people think that they can't go out on parties and works nights out. It's the only way you get to build your relationships, is going along and showing the human side of human resources, definitely.
And then you actually build trust. They trust you because you feel like one of them, and they're more likely to be open and honest and react better with you, and hopefully allow you to help them, I guess, when they need you.
Yeah, of course they do. I've worked in companies where I was called HR. They didn't call my name. And so I'd start to call them sales or service or something. Whilst Leighton, and when I worked at Wellbeing Care, it was Paula, because I know everybody at the company I work in. I know about their families. I know the things that they like to do. And that's the only way that you can build that trust, definitely.
So have you learned those over the years, or do you think that's been your secret of your success, if you like, sort of being yourself? Is that your superpower?
No, I wouldn't say. I think if you'd met me when I was probably at school and college, I was very quiet. I was the person who sat in the background, and it wasn't until I started to go to college and had my first job, and I started to get a few knocks and scrapes, and my dad said to me, just don't allow people to walk all over you. Just be yourself, because you're fun. You know, you can be outgoing, but not in people's faces. Just have a bit of fun and just be yourself and treat people with humility, and you'll go far. And that is the one thing that's always stuck with me.
I think that sounds like, so if you were going to give advice to somebody else, would you pretty much repeat that advice to your dad? That your dad said to you? Is that something you would pass on to somebody else?
Definitely. I did it with my son. I was a single mum. My son's 30 now, and again, wasn't that academic, but has an amazing career, a beautiful home, his partner, the beautiful children. That's what I always instilled in my son, is work hard, show humility, have some fun, treat people in the right way, and you'll go far, and just have belief in yourself. And I couldn't be prouder.
Oh, fabulous. So I guess what I'm going to do is, rather than go into COVID and things like that, because we talked about a bit of that earlier, if it was just to wrap this up, would you have an example of maybe something you do differently? So not failure, but because you don't believe in failure necessarily, but something you would change or you do differently if you were to look back on your career, and maybe your biggest success of those the things that we've run through, or maybe something we haven't mentioned. If you were to pick one out on each side, one thing you change, one thing that you're most proud of, what would you go for?
This is going to sound like a bit of a cop-out, me saying this, right? So if you want me to change it, I will. But
we can edit it, but I'm sure I don't need to.
I don't think I would ever change anything. And the reason why is because everything that I've ever gone through, be it work or personal life, has made me who I am today. It's made me a better person. It's made me realise that people, and having good, great, talented people around you can make you a success. Pretty much all of the people at the HR people I met at Sage are now my close friends, some of who I recruited and learned from. And so I don't even in my personal life, I don't believe that I would ever change anything. I suppose there's little things with work that you might say I may have done that slightly differently. I remember once being told that I micromanaged. And I think the biggest successes for me in my career probably been passing my CIPD, despite the fact that I wasn't very academic, and having the most amazing career that I never in my wildest dreams ever thought that I would have. When I was at school and at college, I thought I would spend the rest of my life as a typist, sitting with headphones on and typing dictation for the rest of my life. But to be able to work with amazing people and amazing, talented organisations has been an absolute joy for me. It really, really has. It's been tough, very, very tough at times. And sometimes I come home of a night and and pour out a very large glass of wine and have a large bar of chocolate. But tomorrow's always another day, and there are worse people off than you. It's just been an incredible journey, and I've loved every second of it.
Oh, fantastic, Paula. It sounds like I can totally believe people are very lucky to have you. I think passion and enthusiasm is just a massive aspect in any role, and actually, and also helping people really believe in the value of HR. So I thank you so much, because I do believe that this would be quite inspirational for many people who are listening. Certainly interesting, because everyone's got their own journey and story. Paula, if anyone wants to network with you, I know you are a member of our HR Uprising LinkedIn group. Are you happy for us to put your LinkedIn details on the show notes? Are you open to networking with people?
Oh, I love networking. It was the one thing I was never really good at a couple of years ago, but it's all I tend to do now is networking through, and it's the way I like to learn as well. So I'm more than happy.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Because everything's moving on so quickly. We were talking off camera, weren't we, earlier about, learning on the job, and people actually are learning. And that's the way it is now. It's not like going on a training course anymore, really. It's actually, how can we gather information from others? And that's part of the point of this series of podcast episodes as well, really. How can we get inspiration from others and learn from others, and maybe other collaborations will take place offline. So brilliant. Thank you so much, Paula. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming on our Real HR series.
Thank you, Lucinda. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the HR Uprising podcast. You can access more information, including resources or links mentioned in the show, at our website, www.hruprising.com. Also, you might want to join our LinkedIn community or tweet to us at HR Uprising. We'd love to hear from you.